Hi, it's going to be a slightly more conversational video today. No scripts today. We're going to be looking at my Adam in Wales board game designer journal. I've showed off this journal in a couple of videos recently, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth, show you what's inside the book, and also maybe fill in a couple of pages from it, which will hopefully give you an idea of how the journal works, but also give you an idea about how I work as a designer and the sort of things that I've been up to, the sort of things that I do week in, week out, those sorts of things. And I'll probably make more videos like this over the coming weeks to demonstrate different aspects of the journal, but also just to kind of give you a bit of an insight into the sort of things that I get up to as a designer. So this is the Adam in Wales board game designer journal. It's available on Amazon right now. It's a print-on-demand product. So that's the first time I've kind of ventured into that world, which means that basically, you know, I've uploaded it, it's available for people to buy all across the world, and as soon as you order it, Amazon will print it and send it to you. It generally gets to you within a couple of days, a few days. I guess I can't vouch for that depending on where you live in the world, but the reports that I'm getting from people who've bought it online have been that it's arrived with them very quickly. And it's full of sort of reflective exercises about you as a designer. So this is not about one specific game. It's about you. It's about your skills, your goals, your ambitions, your various activities, what you learn week in, week out. There's 24 different logs in there, so if you filled out one a week, that's going to take you to roughly 6 months, not quite 6 months is it, but thereabouts, with reviews every 4 weeks. And then there's a whole load of tools in there to help you to generate hooks for your games. There's tools about prioritizing your ideas to help you to work out which ideas are worth pursuing, which ones are best left on the shelf. There's models to look at how engaging your game is and how likely it is to achieve commercial success using the idea execution matrix. And then there's player journey maps, which look at the player's mood as they play your game, so you can reflect on that. Player class matrix, which looks at what sort of players are going to enjoy your game and who you're kind of pitching your game at, what sort of style of game it is that you're making. And then we've got an example of a playtest log, although this is not a playtesting journal, so you could use a similar sort of thing if you wanted to make your own playtesting log, and a nice little space at the back there for you to write down any compliments that you receive, just to kind of counteract any negativity, any rejections, because there's quite a lot of rejection that you get in the world of board game design, certainly if you're trying to publish your games. Here in the reviews, you look every few weeks at, how did you get on in terms of your inspiration over that month, your ideas, your prototyping, playtesting, how much problem solving did you do, did you make any connections, were you organized, did you communicate well, were you resilient, and so on. How much enjoyment, that's probably the most important bit, isn't it? How much did you enjoy game design during that month? And then you can write affirmations about yourself. You can look at how well you've stuck to your design ethos, which is something which you fill out right at the start of the book, is looking at your gaming preferences and then looking at the market, looking at the people around you, the events that you might attend, and then what you want to achieve with game design, what you want game design to do for you, the different skills that you bring, the skills that you need to learn, and so on. So you can write a statement then about your game design ethos. I'll probably go over all of these things in a little bit more detail over coming videos, but what I thought would be good to do today is maybe to have a look at one of the reflective logs and see about filling one of those out. So the date is February the 28th, 2024. And what have I played recently? I mean, I guess I'm thinking over the last week or so, thereabouts. Obviously, I haven't had a previous reflective log, so I would be writing down games I've played since my last reflective log. But over the last week or so, I've played Chi, which is, I've showed in a previous video my game Dino West. Have I got Dino West behind me here? Yeah, so this is a homebrew game that I made using the Launch Lab service, Launch Tabletop. And I mean, it's based on a public domain Chinese game, Chi, which is very similar to Stratego, but it's a little bit more modern in its design. And so that one I've played. I'll write down some lessons learnt in a little bit. I've played Coal Baron, this week for the first time. I've been looking forward to playing Coal Baron for many years, and so I was really pleased to finally receive a Kickstarter a while ago. It's taken me a little while to get round to playing it, but it was really good and I was pleased to get onto it. Then I've looked at, have I played any other published games? I've played Havalandi. So I'll put that one in there. Havalandi is a game by Reiner Knizia. Oh, let's get that down from the shelf. There we go. It's a fairly recent game from Reiner Knizia, who's probably the most prolific board game designer, and it's about air balloons, but basically it's a sort of spatial puzzle, really. It was really fun. That was a nice one to play for the first time. So that's Havalandi. And then the rest I've played are prototypes, and I've played a number of prototypes because I attended a designer meeting in London, not a sort of formal convention or anything like this. This was just at another designer's house where he'd invited a number of designers around to try out their different games. So I played 3 of my prototypes. I played The Seer, I played Tectonics, and I played City Rollers. So those are 3 of my prototypes. I also played a number of prototypes from other designers. I don't know quite, I don't want to give away names or details about them because it's not really my place to share those things, is it? I played a deduction game. I played a game, what would you call it? It's a tile laying game, I suppose, a tile laying abstract game. And I played a 18 card battle game. And also I did play also a network building game, a route building game. So there we go, that's what I've played recently, and lessons I've learned from them. Well, Luzhan Chi, I suppose, the main thing that I've learned is about how much faster that is than Stratego. Stratego is based on an older game, L'Attaque. Luzhan Chi came around probably a few decades later, and they've just sped everything up, which is great. You get to make some really nice, fast moves. It doesn't feel like it goes along at the same sort of plodding pace that you can have with Stratego. So I think speed of play was a real positive in that one. Coal Baron, similarly really, Coal Baron has I loved Coal Baron, absolutely loved it, but Coal Baron felt like a real old school Euro game, and that sort of terminology is becoming outdated in itself, isn't it? Old school Euro game. Most people probably don't even understand what I mean by that. But you are essentially just moving cubes around the board, trying to sort of generate points with them. It's a worker placement game, and it's got some sort of slightly dated sort of feeling ideas in it. Not that I mind, because I used to enjoy those sorts of games, but I'm not sure how well it would do in the market if it kind of launched brand new today. It's by Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling, who are absolute geniuses, you know, like masters of game design, some of the best, you know, of all time. But Coal Baron does have a couple of problems. The first thing is there's a whole bunch of action points in it, which Michael Kiesling and Wolfgang Kramer have used in loads of games like Tikal and Java and Cusco and Mexica and Torres. So the problem with action points is that it can slow everything down because you've quite a lot of options, right? So if you've got 10 points to spend, then, you know, I could spend them on this, I could spend them on that. So players can really bog down trying to work out what they can and can't do. There's an element of that in Coal Baron. It's not particularly pronounced, but it does feel slightly unusual to have this little action point aspect in a bigger sort of worker placement game. The other issue that I found with Coal Baron is the bookkeeping. So when you purchase a tile in Coal Baron, you pick up the tile and then you have to discard the workers that were, you put worker down, pick up the tile, discard the workers that were already on the space, then you have to pay for the tile that you've just collected, you put it into your own personal display, you then have to put coal onto it, but you have to put coal that matches the same colour as the coal as the coal illustrated on the tile, and then you have to place a new tile back into the marketplace. Now, none of those things are complicated at all, but there's a lot Yeah, just a single move of placing a worker results in a chain of about 5 or 6 different bits of bookkeeping that you have to do. And as a result, you're often sat there thinking, well, did I put coal on that tile? Or did I put coal on there a couple of turns ago? Or did I forget to put the coal on there? Or you find you've put the wrong colour coal onto the tile because the colour of the coal that you put onto the tile is not black, right? You have to pick up a little piece that matches the colour of the cart. But within the colour of the cart, there is black coal. And there are pieces that are black coal. It's just that little bit too much in terms of bookkeeping, which means mistakes get made. And it just feels a bit messy and not all that smooth. So, bookkeeping. I'm going to write here, bookkeeping, as an aide-memoire, something to focus on, to try and keep that down to a minimum. Have a Landy is a game where you roll a dice at the start of your turn, and then you move the airship around the edge of the board however far you rolled. So it's a roll and move game, essentially. Okay, we these days, roll and move is kind of a dirty word, isn't it? We don't want roll and move games. But Reiner Knizia has made a roll and move game here, sort of. And when you move that airship, the position that it lands dictates the 2 rows in which you can play your own airship or air balloon. Okay, so it basically just limits your decision space. There's still lots of places you can place within those 2 rows. So it's not like it tells you what happens when you roll that dice. And it's not like it just gives you 2 options. It gives you a bunch of options. But it does mean that you can roll the dice and get rinsed by it, right? You roll the dice and you end up with 2 rows that you really can't use or you can't score anything from. So you can have disappointing turns as a result. But it is nice to see. I'm always pleased when I see outdated mechanisms, and I would consider roll and move an outdated mechanism, but I always like it when I see them reclaimed and reimagined, and Have a Landy does it really well. I've got a whole video which I've made previously about roll and move games and how to use roll and move in a really effective way. And if I made that video again today, which I won't because it was a ton of work, Have a Landy would probably be part of that video. So lessons learnt there were about reclaiming outdated mechanisms. The seer is a bit of an odd one. So the seer is a 2-player abstract, and the challenge with that one is, well, I have some publishers looking at it, and I've got one publisher who is a little concerned that maybe there's an advantage for, I think they think the second player has an advantage, so I'm trying to unpick that, see if I can work out firstly whether that's the case, and secondly how I could balance that. But I've got another publisher who's worried that it frequently ends in a draw, which I'm a bit concerned about because I don't think you can have a draw in this game as far as I can tell. So I wonder what the publisher's been doing. So there's a couple of things that I've been trying to unpick with the seer. I'm not sure what my lessons learnt there are. I played it and I kind of reassured myself that I'm not sure these things are a problem. That doesn't help me though if the publisher thinks that they are. Tectonics was a brand new game, a brand new abstract strategy game, and I just had a positive response to it really. So Tectonics feels like it's worth pursuing. Now, when you fill out this journal, of course, you might only have played 1 game or 2 games, and you might be able to write a lot more lessons. I've squeezed a lot into this section here. And there is additional space in the book where I've left blank pages, every couple of pages, where you can just fill in stuff or you can draw your own ideas for games. I've put this grid in there to help you with that. City Rollers is a game that I designed about 10 years ago, and I pitched it to a lot of different publishers at the time. I had a contract offered the first time I pitched, and I rejected the contract for various reasons to do with the way that the contract was written. It was then really promising with a couple of publishers. It looked like they were going to sign it, and then they didn't. And then it did get signed by actually a very sort of prominent publisher who I mean, I'd be delighted to have a game with this publisher. I think anybody would. And it sat with them for about 8 months. They paid me quite a large advance payment for it. But then after 8 months, they decided they no longer wanted to publish the game, so they handed it back to me. And I was so sort of disappointed, really, after all the sort of ups and downs, promise, success, all that stuff, and then it sort of not happening. I haven't really touched it for many, many years. But I revisited it recently and I've discovered how much I've grown as a designer, because City Rollers is way too complicated, okay, overcomplicated for what is essentially a simple dice game about building a city. And so City Rollers needs significant streamlining, but the main thing that I learned is how much I've grown as a designer, or how much I've learned. Okay. Or maybe it's how much the industry has changed, in that we're not looking for those sort of complicated, you know, light mechanisms, but complicated in terms of the number of stages and phases in the game. You know, I look at something like, I keep trying to reassure myself that City Rollers is fine, and I look at things like Quacks of Quedlinburg with its 8 different stages or whatever it is, and 9 different bits of bookkeeping you do at the end of each round. And I think, oh, do you know what, maybe City Rollers isn't so bad, but something about Quacks of Quedlinburg, it kind of flows, whereas in City Rollers it feels like a barrier. I'm not going to go too much into the other games here because it feels a bit unfair on those designers for me to pick them apart in terms of lessons learnt over here. But yes, there certainly were lessons learnt from each of those. Achievements since my last reflective log. Well, I haven't done a reflective log before, so I'm going to go for recent achievements. And I think my biggest recent achievement is the launch of this journal. There we go, launch of this journal. That's been a real pleasure. I enjoyed making it, I enjoyed writing it, putting it all together. I enjoyed learning about the Amazon print on demand process and all those sorts of things. But I really enjoyed the day I put the video up and sort of revealed it to everybody. And then I had loads of messages, loads of comments on those videos, loads of comments on social media, talking to me about it in various design groups. You know, you can kind of see on an hour by hour basis how many copies are being sold, where in the world they're being sold. The majority of copies of this book are being sold in America, but I've got copies sold in Australia, Sweden, France, lots in Germany, the United Kingdom. I'm sure there are others, Canada. Yeah, so it's available all over the world, as I say, and it's been really fun to see how it's kind of received and watch those numbers sort of increase. Not that it's selling, I'm not saying it's selling, you know, it's not selling hundreds and hundreds of copies or anything like that, but it's selling enough that I feel like, yeah, this was worthwhile, this was a worthwhile exercise, and I hope that it's really helpful to people. I've enjoyed launching the journal, and I'll probably do more similar things, you know, write more books and launch them this way. It's very quick, very immediate. You don't have to wait for that thing of, you know, waiting for a publisher, see if they'll take it on, how long I gather it's similar to publishing a game, that you're waiting months or years for things to actually come out. The other achievements, well, I attended that designer meeting in London. And I designed a new game, which is Tectonics. Tectonics is a 2-player abstract game, which has limited market, I must admit. But I've had a lot of fun showing the SEER to abstract game publishers, so I thought, well, I've started to make some contacts there, so let's see what I can do with that, whether there's something else that I can start to show to these people. Even if they're not going to go for the SEER, maybe I can show them something else. So that was my thinking. How I've helped another creator. Oh, well, hopefully I've done a fair amount recently of this. I've given a lot of copies. I say a lot, I've given a few copies of my journal to designers at the event that I was talking about. I've playtested multiple prototypes. Of other designers. It's very hard writing when you're got a camera on you. Suddenly I feel like, oh, everyone's judging the fact that I can't apparently write properly. I promise I write better than this normally. And I also, what else have I done? I've given a little presentation at that design day. And that was about the prioritizing ideas model, which I've got in the back of this book, the DARE model. I'll go into that in quite a bit more detail, I think, in the future in videos. But this DARE model, I gave a presentation on that. I think it's quite useful. I found it a good thing to consider. Right, things to achieve before my next log. Well, I need to simplify city rollers back to basics. Or maybe I don't. I mean, maybe I could just leave city rollers on the shelf for another 10 years, but it feels a shame. So much work went into it all that time ago, and it was so promising. So I might give that a go. I want to test tectonics more with a new physical prototype. A lot of the testing's been done on the computer, which is really easy to do with a two-player abstract game, because if you're just using a grid and some simple pieces, you can essentially do it on a Word, or on the Apple I use Pages, or you could do it on like PowerPoint or something like that. It's really simple. You don't need Tabletop Simulator in order to make a physical prototype for an abstract game. So that I could do with making a physical copy of that. And then what else? Things to achieve for my next log. This really, I need to edit this video. I'll do that later on the journal. Okay, one action I can do today. Well, I'm planning to. I can do a couple of the. Could I do a couple of? I could probably start on the editing. I'm going to meet two designers for lunch today. We're not meeting specifically to talk about game design. We're meeting because one of the designers is moving to Cardiff soon, so a couple of us are going to meet with him and discuss what's going on in Cardiff, not just in the gaming world, but in general. But that's something I can do today. Always good to kind of catch up with other designers, develop those relationships, and so on. Okay, right, so every reflective log ends up with different questions. Okay, so they're different in every log. This one's which existing games do you wish you'd invented? This one's about when you do your best design work. This one's about different game mechanisms and what themes would work well with them. This one's about which games have influenced your designs, and so on. So there's a different prompt in every single log. Which existing games do I wish I'd invented? I know the answer to this, okay? This is fairly clear to me. I wish I'd invented Dobble. I wish I'd invented Yogi. And I wish I had invented, there's a few that could go in this third spot. I could say Timeline, I could say Happy Salmon, I could say Cockroach Poker, but I'm going to go with Timeline. So what's special about those games? Well, what do the three of them have in common? They're all extremely simple. They're like one idea with a tiny little deck of cards. I think all of them have been sold in a tin. Okay, that's not the reason that I want to have invented them. But these are all games I could imagine being sold everywhere: supermarkets, bookshops, toy shops, airports. They're, I was going to say language independent. Timeline isn't, so maybe that's a bit of a downside of Timeline, is that you have to have different language editions. And perhaps the trivia aspect of Timeline, the fact that it's based on trivia, makes it location specific, okay, because trivia is relevant in certain locations, and which is why they have a British history version and an American history version and so on. So maybe Timeline's the wrong choice, but Dobble and Yogi certainly. I don't understand why Yogi isn't in every supermarket, in every bookshop, in every airport. I mean, it's sold a lot of copies. I know this because I know Bez. Bez is the designer of Yogi. But it deserves to be just as popular as Dobble, frankly. Dobble's an incredible concept, isn't it? Why did I pick these? They're accessible, they're clever, they're super simple, they're portable, they're cheap, and most importantly, I think I could have created them. So there would be absolutely no point in me writing down here that I wish I'd invented Exit the game, okay, which was invented by Marcus and Inka Brand. I heard recently that those Exit games had sold over 40 million copies, that range of games. Now, of course, I'd love to have invented that, okay, but I never would. It's not part of my skill set. I've been to an escape room, maybe I've been to 2 escape rooms. I've played a couple of Exit games. my mind doesn't really work that way. I've sort of enjoyed them, sort of, but I can't see myself ever creating something like that. So there's no point me wishing, okay? Whereas Dobble, I might have struggled with the maths, but I reckon I probably could have fudged it and made it work. Yogi, I definitely could have created Yogi, okay? You just got to think of it, haven't you? That's the brilliance. That's the brilliance of Bez's mind, is that Bez came up with that. And Timeline, yeah, again, just need to think of it. And such a simple idea, the brilliance of it. So, yeah, those are the existing games that I wish I'd invented. I'm not looking at, you know, your massive magnum opuses like Arc Nova or even Wingspan. I mean, maybe I could create something like one of those games one day, but there'd be a huge ask on my time, the playtesting, the prototyping, the balancing. I don't know. I don't know whether I have those skills. I know I've got the skills to create these three. So there we go. That is how you fill out a reflective log. And as I say, there's 24 of these in this book, mixed in with different quotes from different designers, with additional sort of questions here. So this one is about Klaus Teuber, who designed Catan. When I play a game, I play intuitively. I don't like games where you have to think too much, where luck plays no part and the better player always wins. And then it asks you to reflect on this really with a series of questions about, you know, how important is luck? How can a game be too difficult? Can there be too many decisions in a game? And so on and so forth. So we've got those elements in here amongst your reflections. But I'll cover some more of this over the coming videos. So anyway, if you've already bought a copy of this journal, thank you so much. I would really, really appreciate it if you could leave me an Amazon review, okay? The Amazon algorithm really loves reviews, okay? If it's gonna start showing it to people, it needs some reviews. And I've got 3 reviews so far, and I'm so grateful to the people who left those reviews for me. But please do go on and leave me a review if you've already picked up a copy of the journal. And if you haven't yet picked up a copy, please consider it. I think you might find it really, really helpful. But if not, you can follow me as I fill out my own journal over coming videos. So thanks very much for watching. All the best.